My mantra is that if you are being beat up based on price, then you have not done the right job of showing the value that you're bringing. Value, again, it's that intersection of the needs and the solutions. So if they think it's too cheap, then they see you the same as everybody else. If they want it cheaper, I should say, if they want it cheaper, they see you being the same as everybody else. And yeah, if we're buying pens, maybe I can go out if I know that this is the exact pen that I want, I can go on the internet and I can search for pens. And if it's the same service and the same delivery speed and it's the exact same pen, I'm going to go for the cheapest price. So we've got to find something that differentiates us beyond price.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another edition of Talking with Kevin and Son, featuring the people you should know. Hi, I'm Kevin Mclemore. I am your show host. I'm a four-time published author, an award-winning author, speaker of The Power of Your Words, Mindset Messenger. This episode is brought to you by RMK Productions and the 10 United Podcast Network. Our mission is to give power to your voice, inspire your stories, experiences, and perspectives using the framework of teaching, learning, and modeling. Our purpose is very simple. Whatever your objective is, successful people, they create a framework around their day-to-day lives that sometimes enhances their life, and many times, like my guest today, they pour into others. Every one of us has a story that needs to be told. And in today's world of products and services, everyone is trying to be sold something. But many of us, if you want to know the truth, don't want to be sold. Today's guest is the author of best-selling book, Making Seamless Sales. With over 25 years in the industry, he will share with you the experience that he has learned today to help young professionals in B2B be better at their time, win more deals, be more efficient and more effective in the discovery process, improve client satisfaction. And if you stay around with us long enough, our guests will share with you how working together as a team will benefit everyone. So let me welcome to the show best-selling author, friend, father, handyman, and just a downright good person and expert in this field. And I'll explain to you why when you look at the title of the book, you may think the font is awesome. But Making Seamless Sales, Mr. Art Fromm. How you doing, Art?
I'm doing well, Kevin. And you read what I wrote exactly the right way. No, I'm just kidding. Thank you so much. I, appre- I appreciate that.
Yeah,
Great.
you know something, Art? I wish people would write the introduction for me. So that way I didn't have to struggle trying one, memorize it, trying not to look at my notes while I'm on air. Yeah, I read your mind. You are one of those unique individuals that I would say, just like Corey Poirier, which I want to thank for making this introduction. He had a great workshop over the weekend boot camp. So if you Google Corey Poirier, you will find out he is a gift. He is a leader of people. And because of Corey, I now have Art, and he is an amazing person in his field. Now, let me ask you before we dive into your book, I want to ask you because you said you're a handyman. All
Mhm.
right. Are you one of those handymans that once you fix something, your wife has to call a handyman to come in and fix what you fixed?
No, no, just the opposite. She's usually helping me. And it's amazing what we've been able to do together, tearing out walls and doing all kinds of things in many different houses that we've lived in. So we love doing those projects together. And I'd almost do it as a profession because I love it that much, because I love working with my hands and seeing a tangible outcome. The only problem is that I'm slow and meticulous, so I don't think I would make any money at it. But no, she will always defer to me when it comes to the handyman stuff. Unless it's roofing or tiling, I won't do those two things.
All right, I understand. I fell 10 foot off a ladder and broke my neck. So I won't go up on a 3 foot ladder anymore. So I want to get to know you a little bit. I want my audience to get the chance to know you. You are started your career off as an engineer. So I take it when you were in high school, You're probably very good at math and science. Am I correct?
It was my specialty, and my dad was an engineer. He was actually an aerospace engineer, and he was involved with helping man get to the moon. That's a story for another time, but he was involved with the space program, and I always did have a love for math and science. And then, I'd like to believe that it was mainly my choice in terms of what I wanted to do, but I was definitely influenced by him, and I inherited, thankfully, by the grace of God, I inherit a lot of his talents and capabilities, and seems like my son has now inherited that from him as well. My son didn't even go to school; he went right into the army out of high school. But yes, that's where I started, was in engineering.
All right. If I were to talk, were you a straight A student?
I was close, but I also, kind of had a little bit of fun too. So I wouldn't necessarily say it was straight A, although I did I went to Purdue for 2 years, and then I wound up moving back home, and I was working full time in my profession doing manual drafting.
Hmm.
And I did get, almost straight A's when I was going to night school and working full time, and subsequently graduated after what turned into 5 years, but it was awesome. So school does kind of come easy for me, thankfully, and I put it right into work in my profession by working at the same time.
All right. I want to talk to you about your book, but I've always wanted to ask people that got straight A's because I wasn't one of those people until I got to college. What's the lowest grade you ever got, and who was your teacher?
Wow. So the lowest grade that I ever got was a D, and the teacher was Mr. Rodan. Yeah, Rodan. He was responsible. He was the teacher for our high school drafting class. So even before I knew I was going to get into drafting, and I thought I might go into engineering, but I wasn't sure in my freshman year of high school, I did know that I liked to draw, and they had an amazing mechanical drafting class at my high school. So the very first assignment that we did was printing. And I wasn't good at printing. In fact, I did not do uppercase letters, back in the day, probably did cursive or whatever. So I got a D on the very first assignment we had, and I was devastated because I really wanted to do the drafting, the mechanical drafting. And I thought, oh no, I'm not going to be any good at this. Well, happy to say that class, I did get straight A's for the whole rest of the time, all the way through being a senior. And I'm very honored and blessed to have received the Best Scholastic Achievement Award for mechanical drafting for high school, even though I got a D on my very first assignment. So that's so funny. I haven't even thought about that in so many years, but that was the one right there.
Well, see, the reason why I'm asking you this question is because I've always wanted to. When you look at the title of your book, the font is different, and I'm going to ask you to explain that. But I am going to ask you this quick question. If I were to interview that teacher that gave you a D, not knowing how successful you are today, if I asked him what type of student you were, what do you think he would say?
Myself and there was another student that were very, very into it, and he knew we were right on top of it, and we were serious about what we were doing. So I'd say that I was serious, that he would know that it wound up leading to something later. And I mean, he's the one that presented me with the award, or gave it to me at the graduation. So I don't think he'd be too surprised. But I'll tell you what, the other student that was right up there with me, it was a good competition. We had a lot of fun with it.
All right. So let me segue into your book, and because if you Google his book, seamless making seamless sales, you'll notice that SEAM are uppercase. All right. And the reason why I asked that, because one, when I first looked at it, I wondered because I have ADHD, and I said maybe that's a typo in the way that this is printed, but there is a rationale behind this. But also being in this business for over 40 years of selling, which I have never sold anything, even though I'm very successful in this space. I create relationships and I make everything personal. Engineers and selling are two paths that never cross. And you happen to incorporate each one of those things. So I'm going to ask you, how did you start your day to day?
Yeah, so yeah, let me back up just a little bit. out of high school, went to college, got my mechanical engineering degree and started in mechanical engineering. And this is, early 80s when computers were really just getting started. In fact, as I said, my job during um, my last few years in college was mechanical drafting, as a profession. So I was at a company doing engineering, and there's a few of us sort of promising and upcoming engineers that they wanted to protect because there were some layoffs that were going on, and they took us and they put us on night shift. So we were kind of out of sight, out of mind. And night shift was doing process and instrumentation diagrams on their brand new CAD system. Now, I had never even known that computers could do any of this because it was all brand new at the time. And so I started to learn about the CAD system, and that quickly told me that I wanted to move into that part of my career. So I continued to do engineering for a bit, but it was on the CAD system, and very quickly I became the applications expert. I was responsible for applications rollout, and that was with Linda Union Carbide back in the day. And then I went to two other companies and helped them with their CAD rollout. So computer aided drafting, computer aided analysis, all those types of things. And the technology quickly accelerated. So when I was working with and implementing one particular company called Intergraph based out of Huntsville, Alabama, I had been very involved with their user group and all that stuff because of the types of things that we were doing. And as a result, they recruited me to come work for them. And that's where my sales career started. So I was actually, for a while, quite a while, I was a consumer and a implementer of technology. I was the one being sold to. I was the one that was the buyer. I was the one that had the budget. I was the one that was making decisions about what I wanted to do. And then I transitioned over into the sales and sales management type roles. And it started with a very technical sales role. Could be called a variety of different things. Back in that day, it was application engineer. So we were responsible for making the computer software do whatever was necessary for the client and worked very closely with the salesperson to make that happen because things weren't as easy as they are today, where it's sort of plug and play. You had to have somebody with deep technical knowledge to know how to make it work. And then inevitably, you're there with the salesperson in front of a customer. So you are sort of working the system while the salesperson's doing their talk. And that eventually evolved into a much more direct position of sales engineer, and it's called a variety of different things: sales engineer, solution consultant. But that's where the SE comes from in my title, is sales engineer or solution engineer. And the AM in the title of the book, can you see that okay, Kevin?
I can
Can
see
you?
it.
The AM part of this title is the salesperson, the account manager. So, the reason I put this in my book and I capitalize them is because, unfortunately, and you kind of alluded to this, is that engineers are not necessarily salespeople, and sales engineers and account managers aren't, the same type of person, and it requires a different type of person. SEs are going to be more technical, more detail oriented. Account managers, more people oriented and more big picture and, really driven to make an outcome. So as a result, there's a natural tendency to have a gap or even maybe conflict where they don't get along well. So I experienced that during the time when I was a SE, and even when I was an account manager for a while, working with SEs, how I could help them work together better. And then around, well, 25 years ago, basically, I moved into sales enablement role where I was now teaching sales engineers and teaching account managers. And that's what I do now is I have workshops, seminars, and different types of engagements working with both. And yet, even to this day, there's a separation and a gap. So the idea here is making seamless sales. It's a play on words of the fact that we need to be seamless. And I love what you were saying about that you're not a salesperson, and that's the whole idea here is we want to help people buy as opposed to selling, and that's a team sport. But in a lot of companies, that's broken right now. And if any of your anybody out there is a account manager or a sales engineer, you probably have felt this, that there's just this tension. And in my book and my mission now is to help eliminate that gap and help it to be more seamless to get all the benefits you mentioned of increased revenue, margin, client satisfaction.
All right, and there's a lot of technical stuff in the book, and that's because you're a brilliant mind. I know in my space and what I do, it's what I won't say dummy down. I make it easy or more palatable for people to consume what I'm teaching. And one of the biggest turns off for me is that when I ask people why they're going into sales, and their answer is, I want to make a lot of money.
Yeah.
And as soon as I hear that, I stop coaching, teaching. I said, until there's a different mindset.
Hmm.
The book, Making Seamless Sales. You're an engineer in background. You've been in management, in sales, and have merged the two together. Is this book something that anyone at any level, no matter what product or service they're in? I spent 15 years sourcing product to QVC when it first started. So
Hmm.
they had a different mindset about creating great customer experience. Is this book for everyone?
Um, it's mainly for B2B sales. But if you're not in B2B, and as in other words, business to business, if you're not in that, don't tune out yet. There's a lot of things we're going to cover that are some essences or some very fundamental principles that are applicable across any, even, and it doesn't even have to apply to selling something like I have a solution I want to sell or a thing I want to sell. This can be talking with your spouse about, where you want to go for dinner, or as you're buying a car, or relationships within your neighborhood or whatever, those types of things. At the core, some of the principles that are in the book that allow for seamless sales are things we can apply in everyday life. So, while it does get specific, and by the way, Kevin, what you're seeing with the book is a more broad version because I started with just SE and AM. And while there's an audience for that, I couldn't help but expand it to upstream in the buying process, you know, from hello all the way through success and the renewal aspect of it. Because, especially these days, and I'm sure everybody can relate to, think about all the stuff that you're currently consuming, like your Netflix subscription or whatever it is. And at a B2B, a large, company has CRM systems like Salesforce and other things like that. Even if you're convinced it's the right thing to buy or to sign up for, the sale doesn't stop at the sale. And you and I talked about this in terms of your experience in the fitness world, right? The
Right,
sale doesn't stop at the sale. That is the beginning of the use of the solution, and the client needs to get success out of it because that's oftentimes where the revenue is generated.
right,
So I couldn't help but expand beyond the initial SE and AM relationship to talk about from hello, in the beginning, we need to think about us. We need to think about the way the client is going to use this, and we have that long-term relationship.
all right. Because and that's why I want to start because my mindset and what I do is, we find out what the problem is or the why, and I'm pretty sure yours is the same way. Then we look for a solution, the outcome, and then the last part is what my role is how do I make it personal? How do I commit myself to getting you to the end? Where do we start in your book? And tell me, you said you wrote with the end in mind. So let's start with how do we create seamless relationships? I think that's
Mhm.
one of the chapters of your book. How do we do that in your business in sales?
Yeah, well, and so the main focus and the way that the whole engagement starts has to be, as you said, about the client, about the buyer, about the stakeholder, about the person who you are trying to equip with some kind of outcome and success. And it has to start at the very beginning with that because even if they are doing self-service, which happens a lot these days, is people will go and they'll do their research of what they want to buy, and then they'll engage the salesperson at the last minute or as least as possible because everybody hates salespeople, and I can say that because I'm a salesperson, right?
I
I
hate
sell my
salespeople too, but I like you.
yeah, well, see, that's the thing, right? So the whole point is it isn't so much about trying to sell. We know at some point a salesperson has to get engaged in order to get the T's and C's and sign off on the thing and whatever. And in business to business sales, that happens, maybe about 65% of the way through, maybe even 70% at sometimes, and there's a good amount of work done. The key to it, and you nailed it, is it's about the discovery at the beginning of what is that person really trying to do. A good colleague and friend of mine who I deliver some of his things, and he allowed me to use some of his stuff in the book, and he wrote a forward. John Kerr likes to say, "Our solutions have no inherent value. Our solutions have no inherent value. The solution by itself is no good." Even if it's as simple as a pen, it's like, what is the pen going to be used for? Are you using it to write something, to write a contract for a house or maybe a marriage certificate? Or is the pen being used as a lever to try and pry something apart? I mean, the pen itself has no inherent value. It's all in the way it's used. Same thing for our solutions. So discovery is the key because if you think about it as a Venn diagram, you've got your client, the person that's buying, or the person that has a need or a pain or a gain they're trying to achieve. And you could make that like a circle, like it's a bunch of things that they're trying to do. And then
Pie
we have
chart.
our, yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's that's like a pie chart. And then we can have another one that's our solutions. And what we want to find out is the intersection between those two. So where is their need aligned with a solution we can provide that actually helps them out? And this is a classic problem, especially with sales engineers. Again, I can talk about this because I am one also, is that we love our stuff. And if any of you are out there selling, you love your stuff. And if you are doing it, you're probably doing it because you do really believe in your product. The reality is that the product itself, it doesn't matter. It's about what somebody's going to do with it. So discovery from beginning is really important. And then the end in mind is, okay, how are we helping them achieve their goals? And their goal is not to buy your product. Their goal is probably not even to necessarily use your product. The goal is, what is the outcome that your product or solution is providing? So from the beginning, if we have that mindset of we're not selling something, we're problem solving. And we're not just trying to see what we can throw against the wall to see if it sticks. We're trying to help that person with what they really need. And then add on to that, Kevin, the fact that many people don't even know what they want, especially in the higher up the sales goes and the more complex it is. How would I know what CRM system I want, or how would I know what accounting system I want, or if I'm looking for somebody to repair the walls in my basement, how would I even know what I'm supposed to ask for? Do I ask for a wall repair person, or am I looking for somebody that knows about the way the land drains? I mean, I wouldn't even know. So one of our jobs is to be a consultant, and I call it consultative selling, is listen for what the person is trying to do, see what they've tried to figure out, maybe on their own because they've done some research, and then help them with what it is that they found out, what they really need, and what you could bring to the table to potentially educate them about their situation. And that usually winds up in one of two things: good alignment, where we are able to continue to move forward and they like what they see and they start asking us questions and really see that we're trying to help them, or it might be that there's not a connection, there's no alignment, and therefore we might not have a solution for them, and we should be willing to let them go instead of just keep throwing our solution at them. So that's what I mean by the end in mind. It's that ultimate satisfaction of they are going to renew, they're going to be our client, we're going to have the relationship with them, and they know that we have their best interest in mind. At the end of the day, are we actually making money selling? Yes, we are. But like you said, if you're going into it for the purpose of making money, that's the wrong approach. The money will come when we are doing the right thing for our clients.
Now, I know your level of expertise is at a much higher level than mine. That's the reason why I'm here as a co-host, but I'm also here as a student. I know in our earlier conversations, I shared with you an experience that I had, a $13 billion company that I dealt with, and didn't start out with promoting a business or selling, but they had a problem. They were spending $6 million a year and giving product away. They were in the pesticide business. And when I explained to him, I said, "You actually don't know your customer." And he goes, "Well, how so?" I said, "If you have to give $6 million away in order to keep a customer," I said, "then your customer can be bought." And I said, "Strictly on price." I said, at that level, and they're one of the top three pesticides companies. And I said, "Give me 1 year to dance with your best salesman and to meet every last client. I will tell you the clients that you don't need. And I will create relationships with these clients. You don't have to give them anything. They will buy from you and they will continue to buy as long as we're service account." And I said, "The only thing I'm going to ask for you is that to cover my expenses while going into this. And then in the event that I save you that $6 million, I'm going to send you a bill for $6 million." And
I was wondering if it was going to go there.
well, it did go there because
Yeah,
not
yeah.
only did I develop his sales training program and so forth. And the reason why I'm segue into this, because you're at such a high level, you probably have a great deal of competition in there. And a lot of people will make the decision based on price or relationship. Where's the true value in on that level of selling? Is it price or relationships?
Yeah, it's definitely relationship. So my mantra is that if you are being beat up based on price, then you have not done the right job of showing the value that you're bringing. Value, again, it's that intersection of the needs and the solutions. So if they think it's too cheap, then they see you the same as everybody else. If they want it cheaper, I should say, if they want it cheaper, they see you being the same as everybody else. And yeah, if we're buying pens, maybe I can go out if I know that this is the exact pen that I want, I can go on the internet and I can search for pens. And if it's the same service and the same delivery speed and it's the exact same pen, I'm going to go for the cheapest price. So we've got to find something that differentiates us beyond price. Unfortunately, a lot of salespeople, and some of you who are listening probably can relate to this, either having seen your counterparts doing this, or maybe you felt compelled to do this. Salespeople oftentimes compete if price is the issue by discounting, and that's the 6 million you're talking about that they gave away, right? They left money on the table. They reduced their margins in order to close the deal. And in all but the most transactional of deals, and the Walmarts of the world do this and the Amazons, but even they brought some value by having all that stuff together, and they brought value by the buying power that they have and things like that. So my thing is, it's about the value you're going to bring, and the only place the value is going to emerge is the needs of your client and the solution that you're providing. So notice when we do the Venn diagram, there's going to be some needs we don't address, and that's fine. We shouldn't try to. We don't want to say we're addressing those. And there's going to be parts of our solution that don't fit, but where the solution meets the needs is where value comes. And if price becomes the issue, then I would say it's maybe the wrong person. They may be just a buyer, they may be a purchasing person. And all due respect to purchasing persons and buyers, their main job is to get it at the lowest price. But at what cost does that come to get it at the lowest price? There are others in the organization that may be relying on these pens to do something more than what the buyer thinks it's supposed to do. Who, let's say this thing has to work upside down in space or something, right? Well, that's a differentiation that we'd want to point out to show the value of why does command the higher price or investment. And I like to say, what if you could get a product for free? Would you want it? And most people are like, yeah. However, think about this. The initial price of a product is not what we should judge based upon. It's the total cost of ownership. And the simple example of that is, how many people out there have ever gotten a free puppy? Ooh, it's a free puppy. Well, is that puppy really free? I mean, it's the lowest price. It's free. But the cost of a puppy over its lifetime can be between eight to $15,000. So if I get this pen really cheap and I don't realize that it had to write in zero gravity, it might not deliver the value I want. Now I'm having to fix it. I'm having to buy a new one. I'm having to replace it very often. What good is a low price? So back to your question, it's all about value and relationship and truly understanding the client, which takes effort, and it takes a conscious effort to understand what their outcomes are, what they're trying to achieve.
All right. So I'm asking you this because when I'm teaching and they ask, I see a lot of people come in. The first thing they do before they've done everything as far as the discovery, and as they're going to their close, the first thing they look at when the person sees the price, they stand back and before the person even speaks, and they says, "Well, if you do it right now, this is what I can do for you, and next, in the next 3 months, it'll go up to this, but we just want to get you in." I know with me, anytime I've ever been asked to discount my product or service, I always say I'll be more than happy to do so. You just tell me what part of my job you don't want me to do.
Yeah,
Um,
that's a good way to put it.
uh, with that said, when someone asks you to give you your premium service for less, how do you address that? And I want you to speak to young people that's getting into this business that are afraid to lose a sale
Hmm.
versus one that will take a sale any way they can get it, and the reason why that doesn't make sense long term.
Yeah, where what I really believe in and what you talked about earlier when we started out is it shouldn't be a sell. It should be a buy. Instead
Hmm.
of us trying to push or incentivize or entice people with certain types of offers about, well, if you do it today, blah, 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 it should be a pull. Instead of us pushing, it should be a pull. So, how does that happen? It happens by when we're working with somebody, they like what they see so much that they're eager to get it and they almost are starting to ask for it. And they should want it as soon as possible because they're going to get the benefits as soon as possible. Now, there's a whole other thing we can talk about, which is what they got to go through to get it approved and to actually put it in action and all that. That's not trivial, but the emotion should be, I want it almost not at any price, but I want it. I'm willing to invest in it, and therefore we, as the sellers, should be in a position to say, here's what the investment is. And I always like to use the word investment because that's what it is. Here's what the investment is for what you're getting. And if we've done our discovery right, and if we've aligned and we've provided them insights, they should be wanting to say, hey, Art, hey, Kevin, how soon can I get started? Like what you're telling me is exactly what I'm looking for. And I like what you're talking about. When can we get started? And now they're the ones that are sort of pushing us to move forward. Um, Very often the package deals and the one-time only things are because we're trying to get the sale. And
Hmm.
that's where that's where you get the pushback. And this is where the clash is between AMs and SEs is SEs are they both should be going for and helping the buyer buy, but the SE is more like I'm solving a problem. I'm a problem solver. I want to help this person out. The AM is more like I have a quota hanging over my head, and if I don't get my quota closed by the end of this month or this quarter, I'm going to be in trouble. I would just reverse that around and just say, when we are focused on the outcome, then the revenues will come. And frankly, it will help us to disengage from situations that are maybe a force fit and therefore focus on the situations that can give us the higher margin, the higher win rate, and the longer relationship. So that's my advice for starting out is if you get beat up based on price.
I hope our young people are people that's thinking about entering this business, because I know a lot of teachers are going into sales, going away from teaching, and and we're losing a lot of our good teachers. I want to ask another question before I talk about how to get your book, how to get in touch with you, and before we go to a deep dive in the book, is how do you know when a customer is ready to buy? And this is something that's important to new salespeople coming into this and some people that have gotten lazy. And make it clear and understanding, why are they buying from you? Are they buying the product and the services, or what are they actually buying? So the first part of the question is, how do you know when a customer is ready to buy?
Mhm. Yeah, and this is where I think, anybody that's been around sales long enough understands what we've been talking about in terms of discovery and understanding what the client wants. But there's the initial part of just getting engaged with them, and that's called qualification, right? Qualifying whether or not there's something here that's real enough. And that goes to what your question's about. Because one of the things we should find out is there a need? So is there some kind of need there as opposed to us just throwing stuff to see if it sticks? And part of the need is going to be, so the need would be, I have a problem I'm trying to solve, or I have a gain I'm trying to achieve. And as the buyer, as the customer, I can't do that on my own, so I need some help. So I have a need to implement a software solution that's going to allow me to revolutionize the way I do product, my product lifecycle management. Um, that would be the need. Now, the question is, okay, a lot of people could have that need, and somebody could even say, I would love the ability to do my product life cycle better, or I'd love to have software that helps automate my processes, right? The question is, how serious are they about it? And the seriousness comes from what we call in the methodology that I'm using is a compelling reason for change, a driving reason for change, something that has been painful enough or a gain that they're trying to achieve, a goal that they achieve that's important enough that they are compelled to move forward. And that's a two-part thing. So, what is the thing they're trying to do, and then what's compelling them to do it? Many people put up with things, by putting resources into it or making do with what they have. And there's a point at which that's no longer possible. So what we need to look at is the facilitator of the buying process, the salesperson,
Mhm.
is what is it that would compel that person to want to do it now? And when we see that, now we've got that thing where it's going to be more of a pull where they're desperate. It's, current pain, something where something's been broken. If you're in security, if you're doing like software security or cybersecurity, when somebody's had a breach, now they're going to go and start shopping for a cybersecurity solution. But if they've never had a breach, they're probably not sitting out there saying, oh, I need to protect myself from being breached and I feel like I'm secure. So that's what's going to tell us the propensity for them to want to move forward is how much they care about it. This, Kevin, gets into who are we working with? So think about a procurement person or of the person who is the role of buyer. Their job is just to sort of process the paperwork and make sure all the things are in line and they're checking off the terms and conditions and stuff. They are not motivated or even feeling the pressure of whatever the solution is. But imagine you're the product line manager who's got product that's not getting out the door and your competition's eating your lunch because you can't get your product out soon enough and your competition is, and you are the product line manager who wants a solution that can automate the processes, well, they will feel the need to want to move forward. They are the people we want to find. So the third leg of this is, first of all, the need. Is there something they're trying to achieve in terms of overcoming pain or achieving gain? Second part of it is what's compelling them to do that, that the current situation is no longer viable. They have to move forward. The third piece of it is who is the person that is going to feel that the most? And that's what we call the relevant executive. The relevant executive. They're the one that is going to gain the most by the solution being implemented, and they're the one that would suffer the most if they can't find a solution. Why is that important? Because first of all, they're going to be motivated because they're the product line manager who's the competition's, chewing them up. They're the one that can't live with the current situation anymore, so they're wanting a solution. And they are the one that's going to be reflected in terms of their success or promotion or whatever else. The buyer is totally isolated from that and just trying to get the T's and C's. And they're like, oh, this looks too expensive. I think when we work with other people like you for software, they give it to us cheaper. Well, what we advocate is let's go to the person that's the relevant executive, the one that's in the middle of the firestorm, and work with them, understand their needs and the whole thing, help them understand the way we can get their needs addressed. And now they're going to be compelled to influence the buyer to say, I want this solution and I need it now. What do we need to do to make it happen? So we actually turn it into where they're not only pulling and they're not only buying, but they are selling internally to get what they want. And that's the ideal scenario with just those three key elements. If we look for those three elements, that can tell us if it's well qualified or not, if it's going to move forward or not, and if we can avoid being beat up based on price.
And ladies and gentlemen, we have a very unique opportunity here. We have expert Art Fromm. He is the author of Making Seamless Sales. Um, Art, if you don't mind, how do we get in touch with you? Because I know you do a lot of speaking, a lot of coaching, a lot of corporate mentoring. How do we get your book? Tell us how to get in touch with you.
Sure. It's available on Amazon or any of your favorite sources. The only thing I don't have, and Kevin and I talked about this, is I don't have an audiobook yet. But if you look for Making Seamless Sales or look up my name, Art Fromm, Fromm, search it on Amazon, you'll find it there in paperback, Kindle, and in hardcover or any of the typical places you buy your books. And then also feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn. So it's my LinkedIn is just Art Fromm, Artfromm. And if you want to direct message me and mention Kevin's show here, I'm glad to spend some time with you. Or if you just like to connect and follow me, I've got a lot of resources there as well as on my website. So those are the easiest ways to connect. And I'd love to hear from anybody that's watching this and how you took this and what you could do with this. And I love to hear the success stories.
All right, and thank you. Going to ask this question. We're in the second part of the show, and I know a lot of us that are listening that are in the profession are asking a million and one questions. The show is going to be short. We won't have 2 hours in order to answer all your questions. That's why I say hire Art. If you've got a sales team, a sales manager, it doesn't make a difference what level, even though we're talking engineer, we're talking about big dollars, the principles basically apply. Now, um, 8 years of doing what I'm doing at the current company, I did something that they had never seen anyone do before. Um, I have a rule, just like the way I run my company, RMK Productions. I only work with people that I want to have Thanksgiving dinner with. I don't work with high maintenance people, people that have attitudes, people that will turn on you. And how do you know that going in? I said I can tell within 15 minutes of a conversation what I'm going to get for the next 15 years. Um, I don't know how your book addresses this. Do you take on everyone that is a paying client?
Well, are you talking about me personally or what I
Or
advocate for
should a
those who I'm
salesman
trying to
take on
help?
everyone? Because I have a thing is, and I learned this the hard way, is that I learned the power of no. You
Mm-hmm.
know, I stopped doing business with people that I say yes to today and spend the next three months thinking I wish I had never said yes to.
Mm-hmm.
So learn the power of no. And this has happened in my professional life, my personal life, and so forth.
Mm-hmm.
So in your sales training, on your end, do you understand the power of no?
Yeah. Yeah. There are many different personality styles and things, and that's part of, understanding your client and what way they want to receive their information and things like that. I have found that when we are looking for a match based on the things that I've talked about, you're probably going to gravitate toward or attract those who you will be able to get along with. Now, in the entire decision process, with whoever you're trying to work with to provide the solution, there are going to be people that are going to be those people that you wouldn't want to invite over for Thanksgiving, probably. And in
Mhm.
fact, some of them can be big detractors at the beginning, might even be very negative. Once they see what you can do and they understand what's going on, sometimes they can flip over and all of a sudden they're advocating for you, and which is the best thing in the world because they were like negative and hard to deal with. And maybe it was because they were being defensive because they felt threatened by your solution or
Mhm.
they were the one that used to do it. But by flipping them over and now they're somebody who you would want to spend Thanksgiving with, or they want to bring you to their Thanksgiving, that could be very powerful. So I let the process drive itself. I wouldn't say that there's somebody in particular that you would or wouldn't discount at the very beginning because you never know what's going to happen. But in the more relational sales, you do want it to be longer term. Here's part of the way I would say that is if it doesn't go through the qualification process and there's not good alignment and you're not feeling that chemistry, I would say yes, exit out of that, and the signs should be clear early. And the earlier you say no, the better for everybody. Um, I've even heard some people that, especially if it's somebody, let's say it's somebody super analytical and they want to know every last detail, and all they're doing is calling you up all the time and asking detail, detail, detail. That can get exhausting and probably not lead anywhere. They're just on a science project, right? That might be an idea to recommend that they go somewhere else. I mean, literally, it's like, hey, I believe you're better served by, and then tell them who your competition is and send them over to your competition. And then they'll keep your competition busy while you can go and find people that, I'm sort of saying that tongue in cheek, but um, those are some of the parameters I would put around that, Kevin, in terms of how do you know to proceed or how would you know to let go. Key point though, and this is important, everybody, for especially if you're new into sales, you're gonna want to run after everything. That is the built-in inherent, issue with sales folks and me in particular, and what you're talking about, Kevin. We want to run after everything. We shouldn't. We should have a nice, instead of it being a
I'm glad you
funnel,
said that.
many people talk about a sales funnel, and it literally looks like a funnel and the idea is you put stuff in the top and it might exit anywhere, even late in the deal, it might fall out and not result in a customer. That's dangerous because that's where the waste of time comes in that you're talking about. And
Hmm.
that's where just putting up with somebody that's not aligned could be a problem. Well, what I advocate is use that qualification process properly at the top. Do your funnel at the very top, so instead of working on 10 things and getting three out of the bottom, work on seven, eliminate some, work on seven that are well aligned, and now you have more of a pipeline. And this is important for sales managers listening, is that it's not worth it to chase after everything and do it on the just strictly by the numbers. That's a waste of time. And that's where you start to get the gap because now the account manager is pulling the technical person into demos that it's just like, hey, I need you to do a demo. Just show them your stuff. I'm sure they'll love it. And we don't even know anything about the person. That's not what we want to do. So it's that turning it more funnel at the top and then a pipeline. And yes, part of it is how well are we getting along in terms of the relationship. It's a key
And
point.
I'm glad you said that. One, you answered the one my next question, which I was going to talk about knowing when to walk away. The
Mhm.
other is talking about creating a sales funnel, and then the third part that you were going to ask, I was going to ask you, um, key things in talking to sales managers. What are the key points of bringing in new salespeople on what they should be teaching? The reason why is because I've worked for companies years after years that will have meetings every single week, and they will have a chart and they will say who's at the top of it and who's at the bottom of it. And in many companies, the person that's getting the most accolades is receiving the same punishment at the end of the day as the person at the bottom when their numbers drop. So some accountant comes up and says, "This is my budget for the month. Your team is responsible for meeting that. And in the event that you have individuals that can't meet it, we have to let them go." So the bottom line is what young people, what I've learned with these millennials, they look at the bottom line and they look at the people that's doing, and they say that they can't do what everyone else is doing. What message in teaching managers bringing in people new to the business, what lessons of life and what tools would you explain to them in order to keep retention? Because the biggest problem with companies that I've observed is that they spend about an average of $5,000 on onboarding, and then
Oh,
6 months later they build up their resume, they're back on Indeed, and they lose it. That's
yeah.
costing companies thousands, but not millions of dollars, depending on the company. And that's strictly because of the way managers teach sales. What would you tell managers?
Yeah. So, and what you're referring to really is, excuse me, kind of like an old school management philosophy. And while I do agree that there has to be performance evaluations and things like that, very often what happens is they just cut people that aren't performing and then bring new people in. And that whole thing is not only expensive for them, and it takes a while to speed up, to get them up to speed, but it also is really damaging for the clients. I remember one client I went into it was a role that spanned the whole thing. It was called a technical program coordinator. We were involved at the beginning all the way through the end. And I got introduced when I came on board with this company as their technical program coordinator. And they said, "Well, we hope you're going to be around for a while because," and they took me over in their lobby, I think it was, and they had this plaque up on the wall. And on the plaque was all the names of all the salespeople from my company who they had had previously, and there was like 15 of them. So that churn that you're mentioning is not only bad for the company that, the salesperson works for, it's bad for your clients, right? So
Correct.
rather than that, it's about a proper methodology that gets to the bottom of the things we're talking about, shows that you care about the client, allows the salesperson to be set up for success, and has the proper tools that go around it. So I talk a lot in my book about a methodology that can be extrapolated to a general case, but I have specific workshops around it. It's called Sales Opportunity Snapshot, and we have the CRM tools that go with it. Now, why is that important? Because every salesperson should be willing to be fully transparent. And this methodology and this tool inside the CRM system allows them to be transparent. Why is that important? Because as a salesperson, I should be doing my homework. I should be wanting to be asked, how do you know who the relevant executive is? How do you know that they're going to move forward right now? Because if I got that wrong, now I'm fooling myself, and now it's going to exit way down in the funnel where I've spent all this time. I'd rather be called on it up top, and maybe I got it wrong, and I can fix it, or I can exit because it's not aligned. So sales management with a proper process, methodology, and tools can encourage that proper behavior from everybody. I have a longtime client that I'm actually going into the 20th year working with them. I can't even believe I'm saying that. It's crazy. I met them in late 2005, early 2006, and literally tomorrow I'm going to be doing another one of these workshops. It's for another part of their company that is still catching up with because the company's huge. But here's the thing I noticed about that company is in the beginning, we would be training a lot of new people all the time, new salespeople. Like every year, it was these salespeople are gone. Here's the new salespeople we need to train. After many years of doing this, eventually they got to where we weren't training new salespeople because they weren't getting rid of salespeople. The salespeople that were there using the methodology continued to be able to grow and do what they needed. And I've got a lot of people that, I trained them, oh gosh, 10 years ago, and they're still there because it was the right stuff. And their management is helping them to produce instead of just saying, you're not producing, you're out the door, let's get somebody else in. That's a very transactional um, approach that's not healthy for anybody. So I say stick to it, properly train them, and have that transparency so you're all working together and you're willing to get the help to do the right things with the methodology and the tools.
You are king in your space. Um, Two parts to this question. Who makes the best salesperson? Is it men, women, young, old, people new to the career, people that have never sold before, or people that are veterans in this business? How do you know when you have someone good?
Wow, that is a loaded question. I used to think that, and I'll again, there's kind of different types of parts with the business to business sales. There's the more technical sales engineer type, and then there's the account manager type. And though that's probably one of the most dramatic because they do have distinct things they're doing, yet they need to work together. I always used to think that you could not have a sales engineer come right out of school. And the simple reason was because you had to earn your way there and you had to be in the trenches and you had to work with all this stuff. And that's the way it used to be because we were needed to do anything, right? Now with plug and play and with SaaS solutions and all that, the solution itself is pretty easy. So what I'm finding, and I'm involved actually with a lot of this, is taking brand new people. You mentioned before about teachers changing profession or especially out of university, and many companies have capitalized on this. Take new graduates out of university that are really smart and like have the drive and are curious and very often come from maybe engineering or computer science or other type of disciplines and train them on a methodology from day one. And I've seen them with amazing results. In fact, I often kid during those workshops that I have to remind myself that you all just came out of school like 6 months ago. So I think that this is changing with time, Kevin. I used to say for sales engineers, you'd have to have been in the trenches, sort of earned your way up. I don't believe that anymore. If properly trained, and with the proper methodology, I think they can hit the road running. On the sales side, it's ironic that it's almost better, and this is going to sound weird, it's almost better to not have some experience in the area that you're selling in than to have a lot of experience because there's something called the curse of knowledge. And the idea with curse of knowledge is you think you know it all. So you see a client and you think it's a cookie cutter and you impose your thoughts onto them. And next thing you know, it's a disconnect because you didn't do proper discovery, and then you get frustrated because you're not doing sales. So sometimes it's almost better to have somebody that's not that familiar. They can learn it, those things can be learned, and then they can rely more on their sales engineer, the technical sales part of the thing, and they can work together more seamlessly because the account manager should be working at a higher level anyway. And if you think about it, the higher up you go if you think of an organization as a pyramid with the CXO level at the top and the implementers or IT or the users down here, the salesperson should be working higher up in the organization. They're not going to know all the technical details about the solution. They're looking for outcomes, they're looking for commitments, they're looking for relationships. And it's sort of the bottom level of the pyramid. That's more where it's the nuts and bolts of how does this thing work. The salesperson doesn't even have to get down that far and probably shouldn't get that down far in the weeds because that's where your sales engineer sweet spot is. And the two of you working bottom up and top down should have a healthy overlap in the middle. So, I almost advocate that you could take new people out of school and train them in proper methodology. For salespeople, yes, knowing your craft and then bringing in your experience of what you've seen in the vertical or the industry is super helpful for those high level decision makers and the CXO level type people.
I'm
But
so
I don't think it's like women versus men or this versus that. It's more about the way you approach it, the way you help people, and your knowledge of the industry in general, and specifically that person's needs. That's what it's really all about.
all right. Um, Earlier in the chapter of your book, and I'm going to talk about how you set up when you're coaching, teaching, mentoring corporations. I'm going to have you go to when someone hires you, what are they going to get? But the question that I want to ask you um, now is, I drew a blank. Um, when you have someone, all right, because most people give up way too soon. And the reason why I'm saying this, because I had an individual that came into the company that I was working at, and the management wanted to get rid of him because he wasn't producing. He had been there 6 months, he hadn't been producing, and I said, one, I knew the training wasn't at the level. This kind of threw him into the lion's den, and he became bait for everyone. He wasn't an outgoing people person, and I know within the company that I run, I before I throw away the baby with the bath, I always find a way. Let me find some place where they can win and celebrate that win. And
Mm,
this individual didn't do great with big groups, but when we put him in small groups where he could be extroverted in an introverted environment, he thrived.
right.
And I said, can you tell in a conversation who to throw out with the bathwater and who you continue to teach how to swim until they're swimming on their own? Can you tell that?
I mean, you have to see them in action. Um, and I think someone's history is going to tell you a little bit about the way they're wired because we tend to gravitate toward the things we're most comfortable with. Generally speaking, sales engineers are going to be more technical, maybe a little more introverted, salespeople more extroverted and things. So I think you could wind up with a disconnect if you try to just put somebody in the opposite roles. And this is also why they don't always work together naturally very well. Um, but yeah, I think it's something for everybody to think about is there is a place for each of you wherever you're at, and understanding the way that it's working in that environment can help you with the direction you should go as well. For managers, watch for that, nurture the things that are good and beneficial, and you know help with the areas where there's not a fit. And if there isn't a fit, then come to a mutual agreement about it and part ways friends, because it doesn't do anybody any good to pretend that something's okay if it's not going to be a fit.
All right. Art, you are extremely good, and that's the reason why I have you on this show. You're an expert in your craft. There are going to be people that run corporations, both big or small, that's going to look at and says, "Well, if I hire Art Fromm, what do I get? What is your elevator pitch for corporations? I know based on what they may need or what they think they need, what do they get when they come to the seamless salesperson?"
hmm so it's, what you're getting is you're getting the end result is increased win rate, increased margins, increased customer satisfaction. And the way that happens is laser focus on client outcomes, a proper qualification, discovery, solution, and implementation methodology, and the tools that come with it. So I offer a variety of workshops. I have a portfolio that I can customize to the particulars of the client's needs, because some people are further along than others. And that is delivered through either workshops, seminars, sales kickoffs, and other things like that. And right now, really, I would say if you want to know more about the type of things that you might be interested in, this book, once again, started with just sales engineer and account manager, grew to the entire engagement cycle, and it addresses the challenges of SaaS, recurring revenue versus the old model of where we used to sell something and then we gave it to them and it was theirs to figure out what to do with. So I would recommend the first step is, pick up the book. It's only like $10 on Kindle. Look through it and see what you like, and let's have a discussion about where you're going. But the whole point is, what are you trying to do as a manager to increase those things that I talked about, win rate and things like that. So this longtime customer, this client that I've had, they did an extensive study the first couple years of the program way back when, and they found that they increased win rate by 16 points from 58% to 74%, and they increased their bookings by 22% in the first 2 years. Your mileage will vary, but the point is by eliminating deals that are not qualified, focusing on deals that can turn your engagement into more of a pipeline, and then thinking about the end in mind, that can increase the success factor, allow you to retain your employees, and have the happy customers that are going to come back and consume, and therefore you get your commission. So I cover from hello through commission, and the summary is really in the book. See what you think, and if you like it, let's talk. If you don't, that's fine too, because it might not be for everybody.
Well, I'm going to tell you this interview alone is 5 star. The book, you got to get more stars for it because 5 stars is just not enough from what I've learned. I consider myself to be a talent in this field. You're an expert. I consider myself to be a talent. But there's one thing, I've read sales books after sales books, and I've been around people that are selling and selling and selling, both old school and new school. And I always walk away with the one thing that people um, downplay. And I've often asked why, because my business is successful because of referrals. I always know when I'm doing a good job, I never have to ask. But if someone says, I got someone you want to meet, one, when's the proper time to ask for referrals? And how do you address a referral when you get one?
Mhm. Sure. And by the way, the other thing that one of the things that should be coming through here that's important to point out is a lot of those sales books that you've read before are either focused just on sales, so maybe like the account manager part, or just on pre-sales, and it's separate. And that is adding to the problem. The unique thing that I bring to the table is talking about them together. So as far as referrals goes, That's been the mainstay of my business is it's through referrals and relationships. I would ask for a referral when the client is successful, and usually you don't even have to ask, and this is the sign. They will refer you. That's the sign. I'd almost rather just let it be natural as a result of the outcome as opposed to asking for it, which sounds like I'm looking for something, right? I have this longtime client that I have. Somebody left there, went somewhere else. They brought me in there. He said that I was the second phone call he made. He said, Art, I need to get you in here at this new company that he was at. There was a person in that company that wasn't exactly thrilled about what we were going to take them through. And she wound up turning around and really loved it and implemented it to the full. She left that company not too long ago and went to a different company. And when she got there, she called me. So I've already had a third level referral from that first person that, came from there. And I didn't ask them for anything. So I think that's a really good sign is when you start to get the referrals because they love what they're doing and because they want to introduce you to others. So I'll just flip that script a little bit and say that would be our goal is like not even to have to ask and that they wanted to get that introduced for us.
Okay, I'm glad you said that because my thing is with my teaching that I'm learning, I always say give, give, give before an ask even comes up.
Hmm.
A person has to know that you are there for them, and that you're committed. And that's the reason why I said I've never sold anything.
Hmm.
Because my commitment is getting you to where you need to be, addressing your why, discovering what your needs are, and only putting together a program that is a la carte to you. I don't try to give you the whole program. Art, you are wonderful. You are a gift. Okay. We've already talked about your handyman skills. Um, so I'm going to close the show with some fun. All right. You're a father, you're a husband, you're a friend, you're a leader in your industry. If I were to ask three people what distracts Art, what would they say?
What distracts me? Oh my goodness. Hmm. Thinking about questions like this. Um,
Uh,
no, in all seriousness, I think what distracts me is wanting to chase after all the unique and interesting possibilities. And I often say I wish I could clone myself because there's so many different things I'd like to get involved with. Distractions for me, and it's more of like you get dragged into it, is when you're having the technology problems and all that. And I've just learned it is what it is, and I try to just go through it as well as possible, as smoothly as possible, and not be distracted by the annoyance. So I think the annoyance is what would distract me most and be counterproductive. So even a legitimate distraction where you can't get away from it, I just try to handle that as smoothly as possible, move on and know that there's going to be a proper outcome at the end of it. Um, yeah, I don't know. That's the only thing I can really come up with right off the top of my head. I hope that's helpful.
do you journal?
Well, I do. I keep a bunch of notes, and that's where a lot of the book came from, is that for 7 years I was keeping, different notes and stories and things. And I'm like, you know what, I got to turn this into a book. And I finally committed myself for about a year and a half to just put it into action and make that happen. And the book came out in September of last year. So I think it's very important. And one really good suggestion that I just heard over the weekend on Corey's boot camp actually was the idea of when you come up with something, just do a quick little recording of it, and then you
Hmm.
can get the transcription of it, and now you can take that and use that to turn into articles or put into a book or whatever. So there's a lot of technology that can help with that.
All right. And what makes you happy? This is my last question.
I love to see when other people succeed. I'm really all about the true win-win-win, win for them, win for whoever they're working with, and win for me in the process. So it's all about the win-win, seeing them productive and knowing that I've been able to help them out in some way or another, even if it doesn't result in a sale. And there's many times, and I know you're the same way. And by the way, you keep saying I'm king and all that and whatever, we get along so well because you're of like mind. It's like others who get this, it's of like mind. And the whole point is the outcome starting with the end in mind and helping people succeed.
Well, so I will tell you, I've so enjoyed not only the conversations we had before the show, I'm enjoying the conversation we're having during the show. We're both old souls, and we have learned from the old way to the point that we realize that collaboration is king, and that
Hmm.
no one wants to be sold. That we have educated ourselves on human behavior. We we both have a great grasp of control of what words mean. And the other thing is that we didn't talk about the key thing, at least I think, in this business or this art that we have, is that you have to become a professional listener when you're in this business. A professional listener. I'm not saying just listen. You
Yep.
have to be the best of the best, world class listener, because the only way that you get through discovering if you hear what's being said to you.
Hmm.
So, with that said, how do we get in touch with you? If we want to hire you, how do we connect with you through social media? How do we get a copy of your book? And ladies and gentlemen, he is working on the audio version of the book. All right. I'm going to see to it. I'm going to hold him to it. You know, the big thing is that you can't tell me that you're going to do something and then don't follow through. I'm also going to do you a favor. I'm going to introduce you to someone. You said, I wish you can clone you. I am going to show you a way that you can work sitting here right now, and seven different art firms will be working to do different aspects of your business. I will introduce you to someone that can do just that. And she's done it
Wow.
for a shark on Shark Tank. She's done it for a young lady that survived the Boston bombing marathon, and she's done it for a whole host of people. And
Mm.
I'm going to make sure she does it for you. All
Wow,
right,
that's awesome. Thank you so much.
no
Yeah,
problem.
so I really appreciate that, and it's great working with you. I mean, we just met through Corey, and I know that I've known you forever, so it's just been wonderful. How to get a hold of me again? Just search for the book "Making Seamless Sales" on any of your favorite um, medium for getting the book, and then LinkedIn is the best to connect. You can either just follow me or feel free to connect and mention Kevin's show that's how you heard about it. And let me know what I could do to help or anything you see from what we talked about today, the Kevin covers that I covered in the book that is helping you with success. We love to hear that. So, my pleasure. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. And thanks everybody for listening and hanging in there. And I wish you the best, Kevin, with all of your endeavors. Looking forward to that next introduction that you just talked about.
I'm not letting
And
you off this quick. I'm not letting you off this
everybody
quick.
else, thank you so much.
I'm not letting you off this quick. I do have to ask, is there anything, any meat that we left on the bone? Anything that I did not bring up?
I mean, we could deep dive on any of these given subjects, um, but I think we covered the essentials that can get everybody started and have actionable outcomes from what we talked about, and
Mhm.
then know if they want to dig deeper into this. And they can contact you or they can contact me to dig deeper because I know you have a lot to offer too.
Well, thank you. I will say this. I'm probably the only show that I can think of that's in the podcast space that I'm going into my fourth year when I've asked this question. I always say that, you know, everyone's looking for likes, subscribers, and looking for millions or whatever. And I will be the first person that says, if you're not a person with a high call to action, don't subscribe. You can like what you've heard. You can make comments of what you heard. You can reach out to my guests. But I reserve the space for people to subscribe that has a high call to action. I've had 6 people to this date that have answered this question and their lives have changed. So if I was to ask you, if you had one ask or one thing that you can ask and someone could make come true or connect you to, what would that ask be? And I remember 6 people that have been on this show, and I'm going into my fourth year. Their lives have been changed, and most of us live our whole life not having one dream come true. Now, the people that are within my circle have a high call to action. They don't drive by an accident; they stop to help. Art, I'm going to add you to that list too, because I know you're that same type of person, but I need you to tell me what your ask would be.
So, one ask, if I can ask for anything, would help me out.
I'll give you an example. One young lady, and I had to help her out. She says that I would like to have a seat by Oprah Winfrey. And
Uh,
I said, let's clarify that. I said, because Oprah Winfrey is on the stage with 7 other prominent speakers, and I pull a chair behind the curtain and sit you by Oprah Winfrey. Is that what you're looking for?
Okay.
So if you have one thing or something that could change the life for someone else, because this is, show is all about people you should know, people that are giving back. If you have one thing that you can ask for and someone can grant you that wish or that ask, what will it be?
Yeah, and this is going to sound like a shameless self-plug, and it's not meant to do this because this book is the result of 20 some years of my career and then 25 years of sales enablement. My ask is that I would like to be able to help sales teams and be in front of sales kickoffs and TED Talks and other things in order to truly help sales people get together better. I feel like it's the last frontier and nobody's addressing it. I'd like to be that voice that can help technical and sales get together so that they can work together better. And the spinoff is topics like what we talked about today. But that's what I am working on. That's why I signed up with Corey. That's how we met. And that is my goal is that 1 year from now, it's going to be sales kickoffs, a TED Talk and other talks and seminars that get the word out about what the possibilities are. That's my ask.
And I cannot wait for your TED Talk. And that's on my radar too. So, to our listeners, we have covered a lot of information. And I hope that at some point in this episode, we have enlightened you, we have touched you, and we have educated you. And if you're in a position that you're ready to change, I hope this interview opens that window and you take flight. Now, I say this, in order for you to grow, you must make some mistakes. To have confidence, you must address your anxieties. To forgive yourself, you must hold yourself accountable. To learn, you must unlearn some stuff. To exist in this space we call life, you must show up more today than you did tomorrow. They call me the mindset messenger because I have a control and I believe in the power of the words. So, note from me that this episode has been brought to you by RMK Productions and Network. You can get a copy of this interview on our YouTube page, which is RMK Productions and Network. If you'd like to be a guest, go to www.rmkproductions.org. If you'd like to be a guest or you know someone that would like to be a guest on here and they have a story that should be told, go to info@rmkproductions.org. Um, I have had so much fun with you, Art. I have learned from you. I'm impressed by you. I got to up my handyman skills for you because the reason why I asked that earlier is because I am that guy that tries to fix things, and you have to call in a professional to fix what I broke that was already broke. And I've learned I've had a lot of fun, and I want to thank you for coming on the show. And so, with that said, my grandfather has always said, when you get to a point in life that you can help someone else out, he said it's your duty to do so. He said, reach one, teach one. And with that said, we're out. We'll fade to black, and we're out. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you, Kevin. Thank you, everybody.